In this video, you're going to see a simple Excel data-driven framework for the free version of SoapUI. This will be used to send requests and compare responses using assertions. The purpose of this is to give you a simple working project which you can then modify for your own application to get a start on data-driven testing. So we're using the open source version, which is also called the free version of SoapUI 5.4.0. I've tested this with Microsoft Excel and OpenOffice spreadsheet. It only supports the XLS format. So if you try using the newer XLSX format, you'll get an error like this. You'll need to use Apache POI for that, which I have not done yet. So this framework will read numbers from an Excel sheet, one row at a time. It'll populate the SOAP request with that number. It'll send this request off to a free public web service that will take that number and return the word in that response. And then on the response, we're going to read that word that it returned. We're going to compare it to the expected result in our Excel spreadsheet. And then we're going to perform an assertion to determine if it passes or fails. It will loop through each row on the spreadsheet until there's no more data available. So I'll place these notes and all the code on the website so you'll be able to copy and paste it into SoapUI and play around with it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is download and install the free version of SoapUI. That's out there. Don't use the pro version. Get the free version. Next, you'll want to download the Jxl Api. It's at this site. Again, I'll copy and paste this in the YouTube comments. You want to copy that jar into the bin external directory, ext. And if you have SoapUI up and running, you'll want to close it and restart it. So now we can create our first SoapUI project, and we'll go to, you can go to Project SoapUI, or you can also just click this, and we can call this Demo Project. If you have the WSDL, you can enter it here. You can also just say OK, and then you can go to the Demo Project and say Add WSDL. So this is the Web Service Description language. And I have just pasted this in here. Again, it's over here. I'm going to put this in the YouTube comments so you'll have it. But then if we say OK, it will magically pop up this public free web service that will convert numbers into words. There's also a numbers into dollars if you want to do that. Okay, so we've added the WSDL. There's two different versions. This 1.2 means it's SOAP version 1.2, and nothing means it's 1.1. I don't really know the difference that much. But what we'll do is we'll open the number to words part, and we'll open up the request. And now we're going to check the web service. So this is what the request looks like, and we'll put a number in there, 8, and then we're going to run this, send it off, and as you see, it comes back with number 8. So that's good. It shows that the web service is working. So now we're going to go ahead and build our SoapUI structure. One way to do it, there's several ways, but one way to do it is right-click and add a test case to this. If you notice, it's going to come up and ask for a test suite, because that's the parent of a test case. Now it's going to ask for the test case. We're just keeping the number the same. And I'm just going to go with the defaults here. This will automatically add a SOAP response assertion to check that it's a valid message. And that's good enough for me. Okay, so now here's our test suite. Here's our test step. It's just got the request and response. We'll go up one level, right click, add a test step, and we want to put in Groovy script. And we'll just call this Groovy script. And now we're going to move the Groovy script before the response. And now for the code that I have, we're going to rename the response to or the request response to number to words rec1, and that's because the code that I have in the Groovy script depends on that exact name. Okay, so I've added the code into our Groovy script test step. If you notice, these are called test steps, and you'll see we've got some stuff. The one thing that you'll want to pay attention to here is line 8. This is where you're going to point it to your data file, your Excel sheet. In this case, mine's called numbers.xls. And you can read through the code, see what it does. I've commented out some lines that I used for debugging. This writes to a log down here. And actually what you can do, we could uncomment these out. One thing that SoapUI does, you can run these things at each level. So if we run that, we see that it gives us, during the debugging thing, I have number 1, I expect 1, all that. So I had a lot more in here, but it makes the log kind of junky. So we'll comment these out again. And as we saw earlier, we ran the request just by itself, just to make sure that the web service was working. Okay, here's a quick look at the Excel sheet. So in column A, we have the number that we're going to send in the request. And in column B, we have the expected result that we're going to get. Now in the code here, so that's what this is reading in this line. Now in the code, one of the things we're doing is we're setting a property value of the number sent. And then we're going to also set this in what we call the expected word. Is another property we're using that we're going to use to verify this in the assertion step. But one of the things that we're going to have to do is, instead of putting the literal here, we're going to put this variable here, and it's going to take that number sent property. So this is the request, so it's sending that number. And okay, so now we want to add an assertion, and to do that we're going to get the request and response here, and down below you see assertions, kind of button there. So it already shows that we have 1, and this is the one that came up. If we double click on it, I don't know what'll happen. I guess not much. That was created when we added the test case, but now we're going to hit the plus sign. We'll look at property content, and in this case let's use the Xpath assertion, and then this declares actually a button you can click, and it's kind of handy. It puts the namespace info, and let's see. Now what we're going to do is, what's the node that we want to look at? Well, if we come over here, we want to look at, well, okay, it won't let me select this, but M : number to word result. Okay, so that is what we want to do. And then in the expected result, we're going to take this at the test case level. We have this expected word. So we'll save that, and if we come back to here, notice we have expected word, and it's at the test case level. That's our property that we expect to use this at. Oh, it's always a good idea to maybe save all every now and then. So let me, all right, get that out of the way. So again, we can run the Groovy script here. Oh, the other thing is you can clear out the log. And so we can run this just to make sure no bugs are showed up, everything's going. Now what we can do is, at the test case level, we'll double click on this, and now we're going to run this as a test case. And if you look down here, we'll see our assertions. So step 1 has a green, that looks good. If we double click on it, we look at the message. So we sent the number 1, and how does that match up with our spreadsheet? That's good. And then we can look at the response, and it came back with 1. So that's good. We'll close this. Then we go down to number 2, and we've got a red thing there. So it says it failed in comparison. We keep on scrolling, and it says it expected 2. It's got a capital 2. So here's that is reading our expected result, and let's see what it got. I never opened this, so we sent 2. That's good. The response came back 2 with a lowercase t. So it failed this one. So this web service is case sensitive. Now the other thing that it did is it just stopped halfway. So if you click on this little gear in the test case, it says abort test if error occurs. Chances are you want to unclick that. So it'll just continue on reading the spreadsheet and go to the next, and next. So we'll do that for the next test, and then actually if we rerun it again, we see that 1 came out okay, 2 failed like we expected. Number 3, if we double click, we see 12. How does that match up? 12, okay. And then we look at our response. We got the word 12, and we're expecting 12. And we close this, go down to 4, and we have 100, expecting 100. We expect to see 100 spelled out, and we get 100 spelled out. Now, what we can do is we can add a different kind of assertion. What we'll do here is we'll add a contains assertion. And if you notice, this says ignore case in comparison. Let's see, is this still okay? Good, that's still in the buffer there. The other thing that's kind of neat about SoapUI that you can do on your test steps and even here is we don't want to use the Xpath anymore, but we don't want to throw it away, so we'll disable it. Now let's see how our test case compares. Let's run it, and they all passed. So let's double check, and so this time the 2 passed. We got 1. That's good. Double click 2. This failed last time. We have 2. The response came back with a lowercase 2, but we know from our spreadsheet we're expecting 2, but since we have the ignores case in, it passed. So there it is, a way to use Excel to do data-driven testing in a public web service, and you can play around with that. Have fun.